They thought they were dealing with just another black family at the park. They thought they could pull up, throw their weight around, and ruin a Saturday afternoon. What they didn't know was that the man they were about to humiliate had a badge of his own, one that outranked every single person standing there. And the moment they found out, let's just say things didn't go how they planned. This isn't just another barbecue in the park story. This is about what happens when law enforcement meets law enforcement, and how even that can't erase the color of your skin. It's about the moment a peaceful family gathering turned into a tense, humiliating standoff, all because somebody thought they looked suspicious. And if you think the twist happens when the cops find out the dad is an FBI agent, you haven't heard the half of it. It was late spring, the kind of day that makes you forget the week you just had. Sunlight broke through the trees, kids were screaming on the swings, and somewhere off in the distance, you could hear a softball game in full swing. Michael Johnson was manning the grill, tongs in one hand, beer in the other. He wasn't thinking about work. He wasn't thinking about the cases piled up on his desk. He was thinking about ribs perfectly glazed, with that little bit of char that makes the meat fall off the bone. On the table behind him, foil pans overflowed with food. Mac and cheese so cheesy it stuck to the spoon. Baked beans Renee had slow-cooked all morning. Potato salad that Michael had already teased her about twice. They had the perfect spot, shaded by an old oak tree, close enough to the playground to keep an eye on the kids but far enough away to enjoy some peace. Everything felt right, until the cruisers showed up. Michael noticed them the moment they pulled in, not because it was unusual for police to patrol the park, but because they didn't stop anywhere else. Not the basketball courts. Not the picnic tables full of teenagers blasting music. Not the group of cyclists drinking from open beer cans. Straight to them. Two officers stepped out, sunglasses on, no smiles. The first one taller, with a hand resting just a little too close to his weapon. The second one scanning the table like it was a crime scene. "Afternoon," the tall one said, voice flat. "Got a call about an open flame in an unapproved area." Michael turned his head toward the grill, sitting right in the concrete pit the city had installed. "This is the designated barbecue area," he said evenly. "Uh-huh," the officer replied. "You got a permit for this?" Michael shook his head. "You don't need one for this size gathering." That's when Renee, standing by the cooler, started to notice the way their kids had gone still. Her niece had stopped mid-chew, eyes darting between the men and her uncle. The second officer's tone was sharper. "Gonna need to see some ID from everyone here." "Everyone?" Michael's cousin Tony stepped forward, eyebrows raised. "Why, what's this about?" The taller cop didn't blink. "Sir, I'm asking you to comply." Michael felt that old tension settle into his chest. That choice black men know too well to comply and hope it ends quickly, or to question and risk escalation. He reached for his wallet. "Here," he said, pulling out his driver's license, and then, after a pause, his other badge. "FBI credentials." The taller officer's eyes narrowed, then flicked up to meet Michael's. "You're with the Bureau." "That's right. And if you think that's when things cooled down, you're wrong." Because what they did next, it made Michael realize that even with a badge, he was still a black man in America. And if you want to hear how far they took it, click here, because the ending will make your blood boil. You'd think they'd back off, maybe crack a smile, make some excuse about just checking. Instead, they doubled down. "Mind if we take a look in those coolers?" Michael stared at them. "Is that a request or a command?" The taller one didn't answer, just gestured for the other to move toward the table. Renee stepped forward, planting herself between the cooler and the officer. "You got a warrant for that." Silence. They backed up, but not all the way. They started running names, everyone's names, standing by their cruiser, typing into their onboard computer while the entire park watched. Michael could feel the stares. A woman walking her dog slowed down, openly gawking. A group of teenagers at the next table went quiet. 15 minutes passed. No one was laughing anymore. Finally, the tall officer walked back. "All right, you're free to go, just be mindful." No apology, no explanation, just a warning that they could be back. Michael had studied this before, not just in passing, not as something abstract in a textbook. He'd sat in bureau classrooms under buzzing fluorescent lights, staring at slides full of graphs and bullet points. He'd heard the instructors, some of them black, some of them white, go over the numbers like they were reading weather reports. Black drivers are more likely to be stopped than white drivers. Search rates for black men are disproportionately higher, even when no violation is found. Use of force incidents occur at higher rates when the subject is a person of color. It was always data, numbers in neat little boxes, trends marked in red or blue. But that Saturday in the park, it wasn't a PowerPoint. There was no detachment. No safe space to take notes and sip coffee while nodding along. This was his family, his children, his wife, his nieces and nephews, frozen, confused, watching it all unfold like some live-action lesson in exactly what their father had been trained to analyze. The thing about racial profiling is that it's rarely announced. Nobody walks up and says, "I'm stopping you because you're black." It's in the eyes that linger too long. It's in the way an officer's hand hovers near his holster before you've said a single word. It's in the choice to approach your table in a park full of people, bypassing a dozen others that look less suspicious. Michael had seen it before from the other side of the badge. He'd worked joint operations with local police departments. He'd watched how certain officers scanned a crowd, pausing on certain skin tones, certain hairstyles, certain postures, as if danger came in only one shade. Inside the FBI, they called it implicit bias in training manuals. Outside on the street, people called it what it was: racism dressed up in authority. He thought about his kids. Jordan, only 9, who had been racing his cousin to the swings when the police rolled up. His daughter, Maya, 12, standing with a paper plate in her hands, suddenly unsure whether she should put it down or hold it like evidence. They didn't understand the laws about public grilling. They didn't know what a designated barbecue area meant on a city zoning map, but they understood the way those officers were looking at them. It was the same look Michael had seen growing up in Newark, when store security guards followed his mother down aisles for no reason. The same look from neighbors who clutched their purses tighter when his uncle walked by. Only now, it was in the eyes of men wearing badges like his. Here's the part that most people don't get. Racial profiling doesn't have to end in handcuffs or jail time to cause damage. Sometimes the damage is invisible: a knot in the stomach, a loss of trust, a conversation you didn't want to have with your kids just yet. And sometimes the damage shows up in split-second decisions that people of color have to make every single day. Do I raise my voice to defend myself, or keep it low so I'm not seen as aggressive? Do I assert my rights, or do I back down to keep this from escalating? Do I stand my ground, or do I move just to make them feel more comfortable? Michael had made those calculations in undercover operations overseas, but making them while standing next to his grill, surrounded by his family, that was a different kind of battlefield. He also knew, and this is the part that twisted in his gut, that if he didn't have that FBI badge, this scene might have gone in a completely different direction. Without it, he'd just be another uncooperative black man in the eyes of those officers. Without it, that permit they asked about could have been the excuse to run everyone's names, search the cars, maybe even issue tickets. Without it, a raised eyebrow from his cousin could have been called interfering with an investigation. The badge bought him a sliver of safety. Not full safety, because even after they saw it, the questions didn't stop, but just enough to keep the situation from sliding into something uglier. But what about the men and women who don't have a badge? He thought of Marcus, a childhood friend who had been stopped walking home from his job at a hardware store because he matched the description of a suspect. The description: black male, dark hoodie. He thought of Latris, a coworker's sister, who got pulled over for a busted taillight and ended up spending a night in jail because the officer claimed she smelled marijuana in the car, even though there was none. These weren't anomalies. These were patterns, and Michael knew the numbers to back it up. According to a Stanford University study of nearly 100 million traffic stops, black drivers are about 20% more likely to be pulled over than white drivers. Search rates are even worse. Officers search black drivers about 1.5 to 2 times more often, even though they're less likely to find contraband. And this isn't just on the road. The Bureau of Justice Statistics has documented that black Americans experience police-initiated contact at higher rates across the board, on foot, in public spaces, at community gatherings. That's what made this so frustrating for Michael. By Monday, Michael had almost convinced himself to let it go. Almost. He walked into his field office, badge clipped to his belt, coffee in hand. Before he even sat down, his supervisor called him in. "Got a call from the local PD," the supervisor said, eyes scanning Michael like he was already guilty. "Said you were confrontational at a park over the weekend." Michael froze. Confrontational. The cops had reported him, left out the part where they rolled up unprovoked, left out the unnecessary ID checks, left out the whole badge reveal. They made it sound like he was the problem. And if you think his own agency had his back, think again. The Bureau opened what they called an informal review, which, in plain English, meant they were digging to see if Michael had done anything worth disciplining. Michael knew how quickly a small incident could snowball in federal law enforcement. All it took was the wrong person deciding you were a liability, and your career could be over. He was angry, but he was also afraid. Not for himself, he could fight back, for his kids, for the way this would now be part of the family story. What happened to Michael happens to thousands of black families every year. They don't all have an FBI badge. They don't all have the training to keep calm under pressure. Some of those stories end with tickets. Some end with arrests. Some end with funerals. And the worst part, most of them never make it past the local news. Michael fought the report. He filed his own account, pulled statements from family members who were there, reminded his supervisors of his service record, his commendations. Weeks later, the review was quietly closed, no action taken. But the damage was done. The next time his kids saw a police cruiser in the park, they didn't see protection. They saw a threat. That barbecue wasn't just a Saturday afternoon ruined. It was a reminder for Michael, for his family, for anyone who hears this story, that the uniform you wear can't erase the skin you're in. It was proof that authority changes the game, but it doesn't change the rules. And it was a warning. If this can happen to an FBI agent, what chance do the rest of us have? Watch the next video. You won't believe how far the next case went.